Hi everybody. So I am recording this ahead of time because I will not be here for Friday Features this Friday to be live if you're watching on Facebook. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm trying to make this video at the same time on a different device. So I'm going to try to look at both screens. But what I'm going to do is feature our product of the week, which is a brand new kit. It is a felt flower Valentine's heart or square, kind of as a shelf sitter. So the first thing I'm going to do with both of these is add some stain. You don't have to add some stain if you don't want to. I'm not even going to put my gloves on, I don't think, for this. You might like the look. I'm going to be roughing up the edge with some sandpaper of each. Sometimes I like just having the raw wood exposed through that. Sometimes I don't mind having the stain color, but I'm going to just go ahead and add some stain to both because I like to have the backs of mine finished even if I'm not doing anything on the back. So that way the back of mine will look finished as well. And there comes the furnace. It is so cold outside and the furnace is just running non-stop these days. So I apologize if you can hear that. I guess for YouTube I need to turn this down a little bit so that you can actually see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to add stain to this whole thing. I'm using Early American, my favorite stain. Wipe off any excess. And I'm probably going to just go over, I think I'm going to go over the square with the whitewash baby white method. And I might leave this heart stained because I might do a lot of my, if I do any Valentine's decor, decorating, I'm probably going to leave mine a little bit on the neutral side. If anything, there'll be just a little bit of puffs of pink. But I'll do a sample of each, and I'll do a sample of each that has one that has pinks only and one that has pink and red. So you're going to be able to choose whether you want the square. I can't seem to turn this one down far enough. It won't stay. You're going to be able to choose the square or the heart. This is complicated, getting these video devices to look where I want them to look. But you're going to be able to choose the square or the heart for shape, and then we're going to have several options, 6 options in fact, of colors that you can choose from for your actual felt flowers. So pink and red is one of them. This pinks, there's 3 different pink combinations. There's a pink and red, there's a red and white, and there's just 2 different reds. So you'll be able to choose that on the website as well. And then you're going to get 2 different stencil options. A polka dot and a little set of hearts. So you can use these however you would like. If you want to use one on each, or if you want to, you're also going to be getting a washi tape. So I don't know what I want to do here yet. Maybe I'll do something on the back of one just to show you the option, but you're going to get a little washi tape if you want to make stripes. Okay. So let's take a wipe. See if I can scrape any white out of this. I'm going to wipe, that one's dry. I don't know if I'll be able to get any out of here. Possibly just enough. But I'm going to take a baby wipe and just apply it like that. So it's not going to be like a very dark white or real thick. You're going to kind of see through it a little bit. And then once it's dry, you can put multiple layers on so that it can be darker, brighter, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to be taking my sandpaper around the edge and distressing it a little bit. But you can put as much or as little on as you'd like, so that it's, you know, either real transparent or more opaque. So you might have to let it dry a little bit in between those coats. And if you get a little bit on the edge and you don't want it on the edge, then you can always use your sandpaper to sand that back off. So I think I'm going to leave mine pretty much like this and let it dry for that one. Gonna have to get myself some more white paint. Now, for the other one, I don't know if I want to do polka dots or not. If I want to do the polka dots, I'm going to need to let it dry. If I want to do stripes, I may still have to let it dry. But I just want to show you the option if I can find the end of my washi tape. Somewhere. Goodness. There, right there. Just doesn't want to start. There. So let me get that started a little better, ripped off. So you could do a couple things. You could kind of line it up with the two curved parts, and it may not stick very well because it's not dry. But if you want to do the stripe method, I wanted to make sure I could show you this. So you could start one piece, and then your next piece is going to be more of a spacer. So, like, I would put that in there to make sure that there's an even space. And then my next piece is going to stay and then I'm going to take that spacer piece back out and put it in for a spacer again. Now again, you really want to give this time to dry because then they're going to stick better. But that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to keep repeating that. There's my spacer, then I need to get another piece. And you'll be able to cut a smaller piece each time as you work your way down. But the spacer piece just allows you to get it evenly spaced. So if I keep working my way down, I'll need a couple more. One more, I think, would do it. And then that bottom little piece is pretty much the same thickness as one of the pieces of tape. So I could take this one back out, and now I've got pretty much even stripes. So since they're on there, I'm gonna go ahead, I think, and do, I don't know if I can get enough white out of here or not. Let's see if I can scrape a little bit more out. Just enough to be able to take my sponge. And I don't want it real thick. I kind of want it to look distressed. So I just want it to have a little bit of transparency to it for my personal taste. Just being very careful. You're better off, like I said, to let it dry. to let your stain dry before you do any of this, especially if you're going to be applying the stencil. The stencil will not stick unless the stain and the background are dry. So because you can't necessarily reuse your stencil, you're going to want to make sure that the background is dry. So there's a couple. See if I can get a little bit more out of this, what I scraped out. It's not going to cut it. This ought to be good. And I'm trying purposely not to get it on the sides, but again, if I do, I'm going to take my sanding block and just sand around the edges, and that should take care of that. So there's some cute little stripes. Oh, you know what? I probably should. Did I take that off too soon? I forgot to do the bottom. Forgot to do that bottom little piece. I need one more stripe. There. So there's my stripes. So that's one thing that you could do, maybe. The other is you could use your hearts or your polka dots, and you can apply them the same way that I'm going to apply them on this background here. Now I'm going to see how dry this feels. I'm going to take this around the edge, because what that will do is just give me a little bit of that base color shining through. So if you want the raw color of the wood coming through, then you're not going to want to stain it. But there, I'll try to show it up close here. Just a little bit of that edge showing around the outside. You can make it as much or as little as you want. It's kind of like the white just sort of fades off into the stain. So now your option is, I'm going to just give this a very light sanding on the back. Now your option is, do you want to use a stencil or not? So if you decide you want to use the stencil, let's move this back here so that you can see it on the YouTube. You're going to take your stencil, very carefully peel that back off, and then line it up in the center as best you can. Press it on. Now it is gonna be a little tricky to stick. Sometimes by putting the paint on, it's not as hard to keep it sticking, but because I didn't let it dry, it's gonna give me a little bit of challenge. And it will give you even more of a challenge if this was something that was very detailed and like really fancy, delicate wording and stuff like that. But for this one, I can kind of hold on to it. I'm going to press it down as much as I can. Now I am going to take a minute to apply a coat of Mod Podge over all these little hearts, because I did paint on the back there. Whoa, the whole piece came out. So I want to make sure that it's on as best I can. I'm going to go over this just dabbing on some Mod Podge. Not a real thick coat, just enough that it's going to help prevent any bleeding of the paint. I'm probably going to do like a gray paint, but I want that Mod Podge to dry. So let me put that aside. Let's come back to this one here. And it's dry enough that I can probably attempt to do a little bit of this sanding here on the edges. I just like to take it right over the edge, so you can kind of see where it exposes some of that wood on the edge. I love that look. So you may not. Don't do it if you don't like it. And I think this is a 220 grit sanding block. So I will get the edges to where I want them, and then I'm going to go over the whole thing just a little bit as well. So that's what you've got there. Now, I don't know if it's going to be dry enough. Like I said, you really shouldn't do this when it's wet because it really becomes hard to stay sticking. But I'm going to try to do these polka dots on the back just so that you have an idea of what it could look like. And it's kind of hard to see whether they're centered or not, so I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to line up these center ones up the middle, trying to keep that center one as close to center as possible. But now peeling this top off is where it gets harder when the background is wet. But again, it's a stencil that I can kind of hold my hand on there, as opposed to something that has a lot of little intricate wording and things like that. So to be safe, let it dry. For video purposes, I'm trying to speed it up here a little bit. Now again, I'm going to take that Mod Podge and do the same thing. It doesn't take long for this Mod Podge to dry. You just want it to be dry enough before you go adding your paint. So I'm going to leave that be while it dries. I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to come back to this. This one still has a little bit of time that it needs to dry. I'm going to plug in my hot glue. Get that going. And while the hot glue is warming up, I'm going to take my felt and I'm going to work on making the little flowers. So they go from these flat, nice little cut flowers, and I'm going to show you how you can do this a couple different ways. You can go from the end into the middle. I like to go from the middle out, but you can do it either way. So if you start from the middle, you're just going to kind of take that inner circle and just ever so slightly overlap it over itself and keep wrapping this around, forming layers where you don't want any spaces in between, but you're just wrapping it around itself. I don't know if you can see that in there. Kind of hard to see. It'll be easier to see on the bigger one. Just forming concentric circles. So it goes from being cut to you're just kind of wrapping it around slightly behind the layer in front of it. My camera should really be overhead right now, all the way to the end. And then that's what you end up with, is these layers. You can see it in front of my hand. So it shrinks it up a little bit. Now I'm going to just set that down for a second while my glue continues to heat up. And then I'm going to come over here and do the bigger one. So I'm going to start with that center again, and I'm going to just take that center piece and start overlapping as I try to start making circles with the felt. You're putting the felt just ever so slightly behind the layer before it. And that will cause it to start cupping in the shape of a flower. So I'm just holding it in the center and that will make it shrink, you know, a good bit from the size that it is in its flat form. So there is what it looks like once I've actually folded it in circles. So once you have it like that, you can kind of rest it. And let me come back over here and get the paint for my polka dots. Which again, I need a little bit more. Doesn't take a ton. So, of course, now I don't have to be doing a lot of talking while my furnace is off for the current moment. And I should bring this back because not everybody's going to be able to see it. And I like that my circles, my polka dots, are kind of partially going over the edge. They're not perfectly all on the heart, but I also don't want them to be perfect. I'm not going to fully fill those in. I'm kind of going to leave it so there's a little bit of differentiation in the paint, if you can see. Like it's thicker in some spots and not as thick in others. And then when that dries, again, I could go over it with the sandpaper and that will give it even more of that look that I'm going for. Now, for this one, I think I'm gonna go with a gray. Is this one open? I don't think that one's open. I usually go with the darker. I think I'm gonna go, oh, this is pretty old. I may have to go with this one. Open up a new one. Okay. One more sponge. Let's just get a little gray. I'm going to shake this up a little bit. Just kind of a very pale gray in the background is what I'm going for. It may not be nearly as dark as I even thought. This paint is a little bit old, so I think it's getting a little runny. There we go, that's a little better. I want to get the paint on there and get the stencil off pretty quickly. There. There's my little, there is a little knot in the wood, and that's just natural, so you're not going to be able to really avoid that. You can see there's a little bit of it on this side too. But there's my little hearts, just kind of subtle. Let that dry for a second. Let me come over here with my sanding block, which, what did I do with the sanding block already? How did I lose it? Did I put it in the trash purposely? Did you see me throw it in there? Or did it fall? So I'm gonna come around the edge again, do what I did on the other side. And then over the whole thing. Okay, so there's one side and there's my other. And I was just gonna leave that background stained. And I was gonna put my hearts, or my flowers, which side do I want the flowers on? I don't know. I think I'll do the polka dot side. Got my sandy fingers all over it. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay them where I want. I just kind of want to overlap them a little bit, just get them in place. Then I have a couple of little leaves that I could put in there as well that could extend over the side of the heart. I think I might actually put in some of these greens, and I think I'm going to clip this off a little bit to make it shorter. So let me go ahead and get some glue on the back here. I want to put a good dollop in to make sure that the whole thing stays in place. So there in the middle, I want to make sure I have it nice and pressed down. And then I'm going to go ahead and put these in as well. I'm just going to put a little bit on the edge and slide it in underneath. Doesn't really matter where, just whatever you like the look of. You can always come back in and put a little underneath. Or you could put them in first before you put your flowers on so that the flower can go over top of it. Then I'm going to put this one in here. And I want to try to overlap it a little bit. And I want to make sure that this end stays together. So I'm going to put the end right there next to the other flower. That'll kind of keep it in place. So that's what I have so far. And I actually did this backwards. I actually wanted to put these flowers on this background, but I messed it up. That's okay. So then I'm gonna, I think, come in and also slide this little guy in. I'm actually gonna squeeze some glue in underneath and then slide that little one in like that, kind of overlapping the other leaf. You could do that on both sides if you wanted, or if you wanted it coming out in a different spot. I'm gonna do that. Then you're also gonna have some of these little pom-poms if you feel like you wanna embellish one of them even more with the pom-pom. Put a little dollop in there and add that little center. But you can pretty much do whatever you please to just finish it off. I'm going to trim this down so you can almost get 4 out of these little pieces if you were to trim them in half. You can use the whole thing or you can trim it down. But there is what I did on that one, which could have been done on the back as well. So it's a super easy, just a cute little shelf sitter that you can sit up within your tray decor, just, you know, anywhere in your decor. They fit real super nice. It's only about 4 inches. And then I'm going to do the same things over here. So let me get my hearts made. I'm not surprised that I screwed that up. I wanted the pinks on the stain and the red and pink on the white, but I'm too worried about these cameras being in the right place because I'm used to only dealing with one device at a time. Oh well. And you can adjust these as you go. Like if you feel like you're making it too tight, you can adjust it. Or if you feel like all of the little loops or, you know, curves are right behind each other instead of alternating. The goal is to kind of get them to alternate a little bit if possible. So let's say that one's going to go there. Smaller one takes a little bit more patience because it's smaller. But just go slowly and work your way around behind the layer in front. And it will start to form that three-dimensional look, all from the flat piece of cut felt. Ta-da! Okay. So I'm going to pretty much do the same thing. There. Take a couple more leaves. These will fit a little better. I want to make sure I tuck that little end back in. If you work from the outermost end in on your flowers, it'll probably tuck in better than starting from the inner circle out. I don't think it really matters. In there right away. And then I had another piece here, so I'm just going to use it from before. I just want the stems to sort of be covered by the flowers themselves. And maybe I want another white pom-pom. So the kits are going to come with a couple of different options for pom-poms. Probably come with red and white and pink, some of the leaves and the greens, and then you can embellish however you want. But it's just meant to be just a nice, simple little project that can easily tuck in amongst any of your other decor. Or, you know, maybe you want to do both and you want to just kind of lean them against each other. But that is our project of the week that we're featuring, is our Valentine's shelf sitter kit with the felt flowers. We will put them under the Friday feature section of the website. For YouTube, we will put the link in the description of the video. We will also put it down in the link of the video for Facebook. But as always, this will be under Friday features, and these will also be under add-on kits, DIY add-on kits at shopmyhomematters.com. Thanks, everybody.